All right. Hey guys, we are back for another video. We're still discussing Project 2025. Oh, hold on. Just got to turn my light on. There you go. You see me. Yeah, we're discussing Project 2025 as we always have been. We're on to the next section. We're going to actually be talking about the White House office. That's what we're going to be reading through. And then, of course, when we get done with that, if I have any commentary or thoughts on it, I'm going to give my opinion and you're going to give your opinion in the comment section. Don't care how you feel about it, whether you're pro Project 2025 or whether you are against Project 2025. Leave it in the comments. And yeah, start the conversation up there. So I'm gonna share my screen with you guys while I'm doing that. Like I said, if you are on YouTube, make sure you are subscribing to the channel in the Court of Public Opinion. If you're on Facebook, make sure you're liking, sharing, and comment section, and I will try to reply to those possible. Same thing for YouTube. Like the video, share the video, and definitely leave your comments in the comment. Okay, so I'm gonna try to go ahead and share my screen because you know how my computer is. Sometimes it's slow. It's slow. I'm sitting right next to the router, so there should be no reason as to why it's so slow. But it is what it is. So we're gonna go into this mandate here, and we're gonna get into the next section really fast. Okay, sis. This one is the White House office, and apparently this was written, or this section was written by Rick Dearborn. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. I did not go and like go ahead and read ahead because and highlight any areas. But if I see anything that needs to be highlighted that I would like to go back and talk, I'm gonna do it right here, right now. Okay. So this is all definitely going to be live. Okay. So let's start from the beginning. It says from popular culture to academia, the American presidency has long been a prominent fixture of the national immigration. Naturally so, since it is the beating heart of our nation's power and prestige. It has played, for instance, a feature role in the innumerable movies and television shows that have been prodded, analyzed, and critiqued by countless books, essays, and studies. But like nearly everything else in substitute for firsthand experience, which this manual has compiled from the experience of presidential appointees and provides inaccessible uh, form for future views. You know what? We're gonna highlight that part. We're gonna highlight that part. Let's make sure we get that there. Right here from this manual. Boom. Okay. It says, with respect to the presidency, it is best to begin our republic's foundational document. This constitution gives the executive power to the president. It designates him as commander in chief and gives him the responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And it further prescribes that the president might seek the assistance of the principal officer in which the executive in each of the executives. Beginning with George Washington, every president has been supported by some form of White House office consisting of direct staff officers as well as cabinet comprised as well as a cabinet comprised of department and agency heads. Since the inaugural administration of the 18th century, citizens have chosen to devote their time and their talent to defending and strengthening our nation by serving at the pleasure of the president. The, I paused for a second because I honestly was possibly highlight that. Actually, I am going to highlight that. Boom. Their shared patriotic has proven to be a noble one, not least because the jobs in what is now known as the White House Office, or WHO, are among the most demanding in all of rely on the men and women appointed who which is WHO. There are simply There simply are not enough hours in a day to manage the affairs of state single-handedly. So delegation is not just advisable, it is essential. The decisions that assistants and senior advisors make will directly impact the administration, its legacy, and most important, the fate of this country. I'm going to highlight that. Their agenda must therefore be the president's agenda. Choosing who will carry out that agenda on a daily basis is not only one of the first decisions the president makes in office, but also one of the most critical. The tone and tempo of an administration are often determined on January 20. Chief of Staff. As with most of the positions that will be covered in the first chapter, the Chief of Staff is also an assistant to the president. However, the chief is truly first among equals. Of all presidential staff members, the chief is the most critical to implementation of the president's vision for the country. The chief also has a dual role as a manager of the staffs of both the WHO and the executive office of the president, which is the EOP. The chief of staff's first managerial task is to establish an organizational chart for the WHO. It should be simple and contain clear lines of authority and responsibility to avoid conflicts. We're going to highlight that. Also, identify specific points of contact for each element of the government's outside of the White House. These contacts should include the White House liaisons who are selected by the Office of Presidential Personnel. Receiving guidance from the president, the chief endeavors to implement the president's agenda by setting priorities for the WHO. This process begins by taking stock of the president's campaign promises, identifying current and prospective opportunities, and then delegating policy priorities among the departments and agencies of the cabinet and throughout the three White House policy councils. Then those three councils are the National Economic Council, or NEC, the Domestic Policy Council, or DPC, and the National Security Council, which is the NSC. The president is briefed on all of his policy priorities by his cabinet and senior staff as directed by the chief. The chief, along with the senior WHO staff, maps out the issues and themes that will be covered daily and weekly. The chief then works with the policy council, the cabinet, and the Office of Communications and Office of Legislative Affairs, or the OLA, to sequence and execute the rollout of policies and announcements. White House counsel and senior advisors and senior counselors are also immediately involved. All senior staff report to the chief of staff, either directly or through his two or three deputies, unless the president determines that a particular assistant to the president reports directly to him. Most chiefs have interacted directly with cabinet officers and a select number of direct reports. In this case, the direct are his two or three deputies and communications director, PPO director, White House counsel, and senior advisors. Occasionally, the Office of Public Liaison, or the OPL, the cabinet secretary, and intergovernmental affairs, or IGA, also report directly to the chief. However, they report instead to the deputy chief of staff. The chief of staff's main challenge is time management. His use of deputies, meaning meetings with senior staff, and direction provided to the WHO must all balance with the daily needs of the president. A successful chief steers the West Wing using his management of and influence with the various individuals and entities around him. It goes without saying that selecting the right person to be chief is vital. Hmm. Try to figure out if I want to highlight that or not. Okay. We're gonna keep going. Deputies, chief of staff. In recent years, presidents typically have appointed two deputy chiefs of staff, a deputy chief of staff or management and operations, with a deputy chief of staff for policy. Gonna highlight that. Tools have included, for example, overseeing strategy, planning, and implementation. Chiefs of staff then occasionally appointed a principal deputy chief to be in charge of guiding decision making, or organizational structure, and information flow. Oh, actually, that's pretty important there. Principal deputy chiefs of staff. Not all chiefs of staff have tapped a principal deputy. A major reason is that doing so adds another layer of command complexity. Principal deputies have been installed, their roles have varied based upon the needs of particular chiefs. Most principal deputies have functioned as doorkeepers, sorting through action items, taking on those that can be handled at their own level, and passing up others that truly require the attention of the chief of staff or president. Principal deputies have also assumed control over of the scheduling functions, normally under the operations deputy, and have worked directly with the policy councils at the direction of the chief of staff. The OPL and the Office of Political Affairs, which is the OPA, also have reported to a principal deputy. Now, the deputy chief of staff for management and operations. The deputy chief of staff for management and operation oversees the president's schedule and all logistical aspects of his movement within and outside of the White House. For example, both air travel on Air Force One and Marine One, and ground transportation. This deputy also interferes directly with the Secret Service as well as the military offices tasked to keep the president and his family safe. In the past, this deputy has also worked with the NSC, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, and the intelligence community, and on advancing all foreign trips. If their roles are separated from that of the policy deputy, this deputy this deputy should have a strong grasp of international affairs and robust foreign policy credentials. This deputy further manages all facets of the working White House: technology, grounds management, support staff, personnel administration, and communications. This individual therefore needs to be meticulous and ideally should possess a great deal of command and control experience. Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. In some administrations, the functions of the IGA, OPA, and OPL and other advisors within the WHO have fallen under the Deputy Chief of Staff or Staff of Policy. For conservatives, this arrangement could help to connect the WHO's outreach to political and external groups and be a strong conduit for state and local elected officials, state party organizations, and both grass-top and grassroots groups. This deputy chief works directly with the chief of staff, cabinet officers, and all three policy councils to support the development and implementation of the president's agenda. This deputy chief should therefore have impressive policy credentials in the realms of economic, domestic, and social affairs. Going to highlight that portion. All right, next section, senior advisors. Presidents have surrounded themselves with senior advisors whose experience and interests are not necessarily neatly defined. In recent administrations, senior advisors have been appointed to offer broad guidance on political matters and communication issues. Others have acted as czars for specific projects or policy areas. The most powerful senior advisor frequently have had a long personal relationship with the president and often have been a significant have also have spent a significant amount of time with him within and outside of the White House. They have been asked not only to provide guidance on a variety of policy issues, but also to offer instructions on communicating with the American people and the media. In a number of administrations, new offices or councils have been created to support senior advisors. For the most part, their functions have been duplicated or overlapping, as a result of which these offices have tended to be short lived. Even so, senior advisors should be provided the staff and resources that their portfolios require. To ensure that senior advisors are effective, their portfolios must be clearly delineated and clearly communicated across the White House. This, too, is a responsibility of the Chief of Staff. Office of White House Counsel. The Office of White House Counsel provides legal guidance to the President and the element of the EOP on a host of issues, including presidential powers and privileges, ethics, compliance, review of clemency applications, and judicial nominations. The selection of White House counsel is one of the most important decisions an upcoming president will make. Let's highlight that. The office is not designated to create or advance politics or policies on its own initiative, nor should it do so. Rather, it is dedicating the president on his reports on how, within the bounds of the law, to pursue and realize the president's agenda. Now, while the main White House counsel does not serve as the president's personal attorney or non-official in non-official matters, it is almost impossible to delineate exactly where an issue is strictly personal and has no bearing on the president's official function. The White House counsel needs to be deeply committed both to the president's agenda and to affording the president's proactive counsel and his reputation. Highlight that. That individual directly advises the president as he performs the duty of the office, and this requires a relationship that is built on trust, confidentiality, and candor. The Office of the White House Counsel is also responsible for ensuring that each component of the White House adheres to all applicable legal and ethical guidelines, which is often requires ongoing training and monitoring to ensure. Let's highlight that. This meaning ensuring that the White House staff regularly consult with the office attorneys on required financial disclosures, received gifts, potential conflicts of interest, and other ethical concerns. Let's highlight that as well. The Office of the White House Counsel is the first line of defense for the EOP. Its staff must take seriously the duty to protect the powers and privileges of the president from encroachments by Congress, the judiciary, and the administrative components of departments and agencies. In addition to the White House counsel, the office includes deputies, assistants, associates, and legal support staff. The assistant and associate attorneys are often specialists in particular areas of the law and offer guidance to the EOP on issues related to national security, criminal law, environmental law, and a host of administrative and regulatory matters. Attorneys must work in the Office of the White House Counsel reviewing executive orders, agency regulations, and other policy related functions. Here again, subordinates should be deeply committed to the president and see their role as helping to accomplish the agenda through problem solving and advocacy. Highlight. They should not erect roadblocks out of an abundance of caution. Rather, they should offer practical legal advice on how to promote the president's agenda within the bounds of the law. The White House counsel's office cannot serve as a finishing tool to credential the next set of white shoe law firm attorneys or federal judges in waiting who cabin their opinions for fear their elite credentials could be tarnished through a policy disagreement. Rather, it should function more as an activist, yet ethical plaintiff's firm that advocates for its client, the administration's agenda, within the limits imposed by the Constitution and deputies of legal profession. The Office of White House Counsel also serves as the primary gateway for communication between the White House and the Department of Justice, or the DOJ. Traditionally, with the White House Counsel and the Attorney General Traditionally, both the White House Counsel and Attorney General have issued a memo requiring all contact between the two institutions to occur only between the Office of White House Counsel and the Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General. The next administration should re examine this policy and determine whether it might be for efficient or more appropriate for communication to occur through additional channels. The White House counsel also works closely with the DOJ of legal counsel to seek opinions on, for example, matters of policy development and the constitutionality of presidential power and privileges, and with OLA and the DOJ Office of Legal Policy on presidential judicial nominees. When a new president takes office, he will need to decide expeditiously how to handle any major ongoing litigation or other pending legal matters that might present a challenge to his agenda. To offer guidance, the White House counsel must get up to speed as quickly as possible on all significant ongoing legal challenges across the executive branch that might affect the new administration's policy agenda, must be prepared at the outset of the administration to present recommendations to the president, including recommendations for reconsidering or reversing positions of the previous administration in any significant litigation. This review will usually require consulting with the new political leadership at the Justice Department, including during the transition period. No day is predictable at the White House. Therefore, to handle the pace and volatility of affairs, the Office of White House Counsel must offer measured legal guidance in a timely manner. This often means foregoing law review as esoteric legal concepts and instead quickly providing high level yet incisive guidance. Doing evolving world events, domestic affairs, and political pressures, the office often faces questions for which there may not be a wealth of precedent. Attorney of the Office of White House Counsel must therefore work collaboratively with the White House and the Department of Justice, relying on each other as a team to ensure that proper legal guidance is delivered to the president. The president should choose a well versed in the Constitution, administrative and regulatory law, and the inner workings of Congress and the political process. Highlight that. Instead of choosing a specialist, the president should hire counsel with extensive experience with a wide range of complex legal subjects. Moreover, while a candidate with elite credentials might seem ideal, the best one will be, above all, loyal to the president and the Constitution. Highlight that. Staff Secretary. The office of the staff secretary is rarely visible to the outside world, but it performs work of tremendous importance. The office is similar to the military commander's adjutant, as it is responsible for fielding and managing a vast amount of the information at the top of its organization. This includes information on its way into the Oval Office as well as information flowing out of from the Oval Office. Because of its gatekeeping function, the position of staff secretary is one of extreme trust. Should be vetted to work as a honest broker in the president's server. Let's highlight that. Doesn't want to highlight. There we go. Next page is continuing on. The office of the staff secretary has been described as the last control point before papers reach the Oval Office. A great deal of information is headed toward the Oval Office at any time. This includes presidential decisions, memos, bills passed by Congress, which may be accompanied by signing or veto statements, and briefing books, reading materials, samples of constituent mail, personal mail, and draft of speeches. The staff secretary makes certain that these materials are complete, well ordered, and up to date before they reach the president. This necessarily means that the staff secretary plays a key role in determining who weighs in on policy matters and when. Let's that. As noted above, the staff secretary also handles information leaving the Oval Office. The president may have questions after reviewing incoming material, may wish to seek more information, or demand revisions. The staff secretary is often responsible for directing these requests to the appropriate places and one of the staff secretary's critical functions is managing and overseeing the clearance process for the president's daily/nightly briefing book. This book is filled with all the reading material and leading documentation the president needs in the morning and the evening to help him make decisions. The staff secretary also oversees the use of the president's signature, whether by hand or by auto pen, and manages the office of the executive clerk, office of records management, and office of presidential correspondence. The Office of Communications. The Office of Communications, which operates under the Director of the Communications, conveys the President's agenda to the public through various media, including speeches and remarks, press briefings, off the record discussions with reporters, and social. Depending on how the President chooses to structure his White House, the Office of Communications may include the offices of press secretary or press office, but no matter how it is structured, the offices must work closely with the press office as well as the president's speechwriters and digital strategists. Operational functions of the Office of Communications include scheduling and running press briefings, meetings, media appearances, speeches, and a range of other events. The Office of Communications must maintain robust relationships with the White House Press Corps and White House Correspondents Association, regional stakeholders, and key interest groups. No legal entitlement exists for the provision of permanent space for media campus, and the next administration should re-examine the balance between media demands and space constraints on the White House premises. Leadership with the office communications should include communications director who is direct report to the chief staff, a deputy communications director, a deputy director for strategic communications, and a press secretary. This leadership must work together closely to drive the national narrative about the White House. The best resource. The president conveys the White House's overall message through one or two inaugural addresses, State of the Union addresses, speech to Congress, and press conferences. This office must also ensure that the various White House offices disseminate a unified message to the public. The communications director and the press secretary in particular should be careful to avoid contradicting the president or delivering conflicting information. Speech writing team is a critical component of the communications team. Speech writing is a unique talent. The writers selected must understand policy, should have a firm grasp of history and other liberal arts disciplines, and should be able to learn and adopt the president's style of rhetoric and mode of delivery. The press secretary is the president's spokesperson, communicating to the American people through the media. The press secretary engages with the White House press corps, formally through press briefings and informally through impromptu gaggles and meetings. Individuals who serve in this role must be quick on their feet, which means, when appropriate, deftly refuting and rebutting correspondence questions and comments. The communications conveyed the president's mission to the American people. Especially for conservatives, this means navigating the mainstream media to ensure that the president's agenda is conveyed effectively and accurately. The communications director must be polite, savvy, and very aware of the ongoing activities of the other White House offices. The new administration should examine the nature of the relationship between itself and with White House correspondents, associating and considering where an alternative coordinating body might. Let me start that one over. The new administration should examine the nature of the relationship between itself and the White House Correspondents Association and consider whether an alternative coordinating body may be suitable. Offices of Legislative Affairs, or the OLA. Created by President Dwight Eisenhower, the OLA has continued to serve as the liaison between the White House and Congress. The White House must work with the congressional leaders to ensure presidential nominees for roles such as cabinet secretaries and ambassadors are confirmed by the Senate. The White House also relies on Congress to enact reforms promised by the president on the campaign trail, whether those promises relate to health care, education, or national defense. Because Congress holds the power of the purse, White House staffers must ensure that there is enough support on the Hill to secure the necessary funding through the appropriations process to fulfill the president's agenda. The OLA reports directly to the chief of staff, and in some administrations has done so under the guidance of a deputy chief of staff, the deputy chief of staff for policy. Regardless of the person to whom the OLA reports, however, the offices exercise a certain autonomy on behalf of the president and the chief of staff in directly influencing congressional leaders of both major political parties. The OLA often must function as the mediator among the parties and find common ground to facilitate the successful enactment of the president's agenda. As in any case with the White House offices, but especially the Office of the Communications, the OLA must ensure that congressional leaders receive one unified message. If other actors within the White House maintain their own relationships with congressional leaders and staffers, it may appear that the president's agenda is fractured and lacks consensus. This dynamic has caused real problems for many presidents in the past. Internally, OLA is an advice to policy staffers regarding whether certain ideas are politically feasible. Externally, OLA staffers have to communicate continuously with congressional offices of both parties in both the House and the Senate to ensure that the president has enough support to enact its legislative priorities or sustain votes. The OLA requires staffers who are effective communicators and can provide a dose of reality to other White House staffers when necessary. Although a policy proposal from within the White House may be a great idea, OLA staffers must ensure that it is politically feasible. OLA staffers must therefore be skilled in both politics and policy. Furthermore, the president should seek out individuals who can advance his agenda and at the same time forge pathways with members of the opposing political party on their priorities. Most important, the OLA must function as a well oiled machine, precisely synced. The president cannot afford to have a tennis player on, much less as a leader of his football team. Office of Presidential Personnel, or PPO. The political axiom that personnel is policy was popularized under President Ronald Reagan during the 1981 presidential transition. Now, one of the most important offices in the White House is the PPO, which was created under President Richard Nixon to centralize political appointments. Departments and agencies had and still have directed legal authority on hiring and firing, but the power to fill Schedule C positions, the core of the political jobs, is vested with the president. Therefore, the White House, not the department or agency, has the final word of political appointments. PPO's primarily PPO's primary responsibility is to staff the executive branch with individuals who are equipped to implement the president's agenda. Although, okay, although its focus should be identifying and recruiting leaders to fill the approximately 100,000 appointments that require Senate confirmation, PPO must also fill approximately 3,000 political jobs that require dedicated conservatives to support the administrator's political leadership. Frequently, many medium tier and top tier jobs have been filled by policy experts tasked with accomplishing much of the work of the administration. At the same time, appointees in the entry level jobs have brought invaluable energy and commitment to the White House and have proved to be the farm team for the conservative movement. The offices the Office of Presidential Personnel is responsible for identifying potential political personnel, both actively through recruitment and passively by yielding resumes and ad- adjudicating requests for political actors. Vetting potential political personnel by conducting political background checks and reviewing of any clearance and fitness assessments by departments and agencies, making recommendations to the president and to other appointment authorities on behalf of the president, identifying pro- um, programmatic political workforce needs early and developing plans. For example, Schedule F. Maintaining a strong relationship with the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, both for operational purposes and to effectuate the president's direct Title 5 authorities. The president is in charge of the federal workforce and exercises control principally by working with the director of the Office of Personnel Management, training and connecting political personnel, playing bad cop in a way that other White House offices cannot, including serving as the office that takes direct responsibility for firings and hirings, serving as a personnel link between conservative organizations and the executive branch. In most administrations, PPO will staff more than 100 positions during a transition and thousands of non career positions during the president's first term. Direct authority and a strong relationship with the president are necessary attributes for any PPO at direct review and control of personnel files, including security clearance dossiers. At the highest level, PPO is tasked with of political appointments are an immense importance in credentialing the training future leaders. In addition, whatever one's view of the constitutionality of various civil service rules, for example, the Federal Vacancies Reform Act of 1998 might be, it is necessary to ensure that departments and agencies have robust cadres of mod- political staff just below senior level in the event of an unexpected vacancies. Office of Political Affairs, or the OPA. The OPA is the primary office within the executive branch for managing the president's political interests. Although its specific functions vary from administration to administration, the OPA typically serves as the liaison between the president and associate political entities, national committees, federal and state campaigns, and interest groups. Within legal guidance, the OPA engages in outreach, conducts casework, and, if the president is up for reelection, assists with his campaign. The OPA may also monitor congressional campaigns, arrange presidential visits with other political campaigns, and recommend campaign staff to the Office of Presidential Personnel for service in the executive branch. The OPA further serves as a line of communication between the White House and the presidential's political party. This includes both relaying the president's ambitions to political interests and listening to the needs of political interests. This relationship allows for the exchange of information between the White House and political actors across the country. The OPA should have one director of political affairs who reports either to the chief of staff or to the deputy chief of staff. The OPA should also include various deputy directors, each of whom is responsible for a certain geographical region of the country. Because nearly all White House activities are in some way inherently political, the OPA need to be aware of the presidential actions and activities, including travel, policy decisions, speeches, nominations, and responses of matters to national security, and consider how they might affect the president's image. The OPA must therefore have a designated staffer who communicates not only with other White House offices, but also with the cabinet of the and executive branch. Now we're talking about the OCA, the Office of Cabinet Affairs. The OCA's role has changed to some degree over the course of various administrations, but its overriding function remains the same: to ensure the coordination of policy and communication between the White House and the cabinet. Most important, the OCA coordinates all cabinet meetings with the president. It should be also organize and administer regular meetings of the deputy secretaries, because they also typically serve vital roles in the departments and agencies, and further often become acting secretaries when cabinet members resign. There should be one cabinet secretary who reports to the chief of staff's office either directly or through a deputy chief, according to the chief's preference and focus. The cabinet secretary maintains a direct relationship with all members of the cabinet. The OCA further consists of deputies and special assistants who work with each department's principal, deputy secretary, under secretaries, and other senior staff. The OCA also connects the department of who offices. The OCA coordinates with the staff's offices and the Office of Communications to promote the president's agenda through the cabinet's departments and agencies. The cabinet's communication staffers are obviously another critical component of this operation. In prior administrations, the OCA has played a vital role by tracking the president's agenda for the chief of staff, deputy chiefs, and senior advisors. It has worked with each department and agency to advance policy priorities. In the future, amplifying this function would truly benefit both the president and the conservative movement. From time to time through an administration, travel optics, ethics, and a Hatch Act involving cabinet members, deputies, and senior staffers can arise. So the OCA is normally tasked with keeping the WHO or the WHO informed on such development, providing support if and when necessary. Ideal cabinet secretary will be exceptional in organizational skills and be a seasonal political operative or attorney. Because many cabinet officials have been former presidential candidates, governors, and ambassadors, and members of Congress, the ideal candidate should also possess the ability to interact with and persuade accomplished individuals. Office of Public Liaison, or the OPL. The OPL is critically important in building coalitions and support for the president's agenda across every aligned social, faith-based, minority, and economic interest group. It is a critical tool for shaping public opinion and keeping myriad supporters as well as frenemies and opponents alike who are within reach better informed. The OPL is notably large office. It should have one director who reports to the chief of staff's office either directly or through a deputy, according to the chief's preference and focus. The director must maintain relationships not only with other WHO heads, but also with the senior staff and in every cabinet department and agency. Since the president's agenda